Hi. Okay, it's time someone speaks up. I had no plans to go live. I haven't been on as much on Facebook lately, or really in the last few years. I popped on and shared some Bible study stuff with you guys and a little bit here and there about the process of rebuilding yourself and going through divorce. But I used to be on here all the time, and it just became a difficult place for a while. It wasn't the politics, it wasn't even the people, it was the situation I was in. And where it used to feel like a community for me, it started to feel like it was a place I didn't want to be. But the good Lord had a bigger plan. And I tried to, I think it was last summer, I tried to shut everything down. I closed my LinkedIn account, completely lost all my recommendations. That's okay. I got off Instagram for a long time. I got off Facebook for like 6 months. I took a total break from everything. And I went to the Lord and I was like, Lord, what is going on here? Like, why am I not wanting to be here anymore? And he wouldn't let me shut it off, which I don't think that's everyone's story. I think some people, he tells them it's not a good place for them, but he told me that he was doing a new thing. And he had something for me to say. At the time, I didn't really know what it was. I was working on a book, which is published, and working on just getting through the night sleeping, because I had been under severe sleep deprivation for about 2 years prior. I was also trying to just stay alive, literally. It just kind of, he didn't really answer me at the time. And so I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and I still posted some stuff here and there. And then the beginning of the year came around, and if you're watching this right now, I know there's some of you that are about to be like, this is me. Okay. So, but the beginning of the year rolled around and I went through separation, and then represented myself. Some of you know this, but I represented myself as my own lawyer in court. That was not the plan. I actually went up against one of the most well-known attorneys here in town that specifically focuses on, typically the father's not always, but as a defense trial attorney. And I had to represent myself for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't have as much access to financial things. Some of you have been there. You know exactly what I'm talking about, because a lot of you guys have DM'd me. And I can't go into the specifics of the case because that's not good for our son. But I will tell you that overall general information that could easily be looked up. I represent myself, and God did something like really wild in the process. He had me share part of the way through that representation this post that ended up going on both Facebook and Instagram. It was posted originally on Instagram and I pushed it over to Facebook. It was one that I didn't want to write, but I knew I had to be obedient. And some of the stuff I'm about to share with you is stuff that I didn't necessarily want to tell. There was a part of me that has just wanted to continue on sharing about fashion and my travels and even some of the things I've gone through faith-wise, but stay away from this topic. And then it was revealed, nope, that's not what I designed you for. I didn't design you to just do faith and surface, surface things. I didn't design you to just talk about clothing and give people style tips. I designed something else for you, and it is now your time. I need you to speak up. And so he gave me some biblical references. The Lord's like really interesting. He'll go quiet for a long time, and then he'll make it clearly evident on what you need to do if you're walking with him. And I think in the times that you're being quiet, he's being quiet, he's doing stuff behind the scenes, and he's helping you like stretch and like figure things out so that you can lean on him, right? You can't lean on him if he's always telling you exactly what to do. You have to kind of like pull back in those quiet moments and figure it out. And y'all make sure you say hi. Even if you don't want to share about your story, you're welcome to, please. If you have something to add to this conversation, please drop it in the comments. You can also DM me. I am oftentimes behind on my DMs, but I do eventually read them, and I love hearing from you. I just get a little overwhelmed sometimes, and I have to step back and do things at a pace that I can manage, But I always read them, and I appreciate them. And I love hearing your stories and what you've gone through. But the Lord he went quiet for so long. And then he would tell me to do something, and then it would go quiet for a really long time. And I was like, this is so hard. And during those periods of quiet were the times that God had me, like I was reading the Bible. I didn't stop. I didn't stop praying to him. I didn't stop calling upon him. I didn't stop walking with him. I'm not perfect, but I will say that just because he wasn't giving me further instruction didn't mean that I wasn't showing up on my end. And I had to show up, because at this point, if you're representing yourself in a case, on top of that, I'm a mom of 2 kids, not just the one that I was working through custody things with. But I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I also, income had to happen, among other things, because that was no longer existent as of February from the businesses I did own. So a lot happened in that time frame, and God made this particular message evidently clear today that it needed to be shared right now. So I have just gotten back. Max is sleeping. We just got back from the pool, and I'm on here, and I'm going to talk about something called coercive control. So there's different types of abuse, and there's different types of control. Okay, you have what many people easily recognize, which is abuse that's loud and verbally like berating and cursing at you and beating you or physically injuring you. There's the physical side of abuse. There's the verbal side of abuse. There's obviously the sexual side of abuse. There's a lot of different forms. There's financial abuse, which is harder sometimes to see, and there's different versions of that too. There's psychological abuse. And then there's something called coercive control. And coercive control is where you feel like you have to do something that you don't want to do, that maybe even you've expressed that you don't want to do. You've set a boundary, but you find yourself having to do it, whatever it is. It could be having to show up for somebody whenever they want it, or being at their, at their discretion, right? It could be something in the intimacy realm where you feel like you have to perform a certain thing or do a certain thing, or something will happen. And you don't even know what the will happen is, but you know you have to do it. It could also be that you find yourself, like coercive control can also be where you find yourself giving, like spending all of your own personal money on the other person, but it's like not reciprocated the same way. And no matter what, you are always running out. But they're not telling you you have to do it, but you know there are consequences if you don't do it. Does that make sense? Leah says family court in Louisiana doesn't recognize this as abuse. No bruises, no abuse. It's frustrating. Yes, it is frustrating. I will tell you, it's very frustrating. And even when there are bruises or broken door frames or things that are clearly not right, I will tell you that even the police won't sometimes file it as destruction. Okay, so you can't. Getting a protective order is actually a really hard thing to do. I want to put that out there to anyone listening to this. Getting a protective order is not a simple thing. You can call the police. The police can come by. They can look at the entire situation and write it off as a domestic dispute. Especially if your partner knows somebody in the police department. Anyhow, continuing forward, that's just especially if they did, if hypothetically speaking. I'm not here to give legal advice. Nothing in this is me giving legal advice. I'm not an attorney. I did not pass the bar. I've read a lot of legal things, but I am not. I'm just giving you some general information and some of my own personal experience. But coercive control is something I spent a lot of time with my therapist on, because I kept sharing while I was in weekly therapy that I felt like I kept having to do certain things and I didn't want to do them. Like I didn't want to do them and I didn't have time for me. Like I didn't have time, and we're not talking like although people deserve like spa time, don't get me wrong. We're not talking like that kind of me time. We're talking like the kind of me time where I can just let my nervous system settle. And even when I had time to myself, I was like having to cram so much into that time. And oftentimes under coercive control, you're being checked on a lot. If you're being checked on constantly, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? That's oftentimes a control mechanism. And so what happens is, as you lose more and more time to yourself, and you're giving all of your resources and you're giving all of your time away, you start losing your identity. And when you lose your identity, then becomes a downward spiral into deep depression. And guess what deep depression will lead to? If you have been in depression long enough, usually removing yourself from earth is like the next thing that a person starts to consider. Because what happens is the brain is so low on serotonin and so low on dopamine, and you haven't had any sort of agency in your life. You've lost your voice in everything that you're doing. You can't relax. Yes, you're always in fight or flight. If your body is in fight or flight long enough, it goes into a level called dormant. And dormant is one step below basically death. Okay. So then coercive control. Usually you don't have access to finances. Maybe before a relationship or a marriage, you were doing fine. You had resources, you had a job, but slowly and slowly and slowly, or fast over the relationship, all of a sudden it all dries up. It's all gone because you kept giving to this other person. And in the back of your mind, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I got here, right? Like, how is this strong, independent woman or man? It can happen to men too. Okay, I'm not going to just say it happens to women. It can happen to men too. But how did I get here, you know? but you don't have time to think about it because every 5 seconds someone's checking up on you, demanding something out of you without actually demanding, but you know you have to do it. Or you are in a fight with or argument with that person. There is no winning no matter where you go or what you do. And it doesn't matter how much therapy you get because you're doing all of the emotional labor. It is a hard place to be. It is a very, very, very hard place to be. And I want you to know you don't deserve it. I want you to know you don't deserve it. But there is a reason that you're in it. Does that make sense? There's a reason that it's happening in your life. Does it mean you deserve it? No. Does it mean you're going to be there forever? No. But it is happening. And so I think the first step of getting out of a situation like that is recognizing what's going on. And for me, I actually started putting dialogue into, you guys might laugh, but I started using ChatGPT, which is recommended by the person I was having conflict with for work. I guess they thought that it would make me more productive, but I was struggling to even focus on anything. And so I started putting ChatGPT conversations into it and asking it to analyze. And it did. And it told me this is psychological manipulation. So here's the thing. As I started studying what coercive control was, I learned that a lot of people don't realize they're doing it, okay? These are learned behaviors from their childhood. They probably had 1 or 2 parents like this. This is how they learn to survive, okay? But just because you can have compassion for them without necessarily continuing a situation anymore. Like you can look at somebody and say, look, it really sucks that you grew up this way, but I'm not responsible for healing your stuff. And you can't heal another person. You can help inspire them. You can help bring Christ to them. You can show them agape love, which is an unconditional love, but love is not losing yourself. Loyalty is not self-sabotage. Loving somebody else does not include you becoming nothing. Okay? That's not love. That's actually counterfeit love, and it's coercive control. Okay? So what do you do when you get there? Well, once you realize and you come to terms and you're like, oh man, this is not going to work. The next step is you have to, you got to separate. You got to either separate or you got to leave or whatnot. And I think this is one of the hardest phases because your brain has formed a psychological addiction to the chaos. So you're in an addictive cycle. It releases all the same, like when you are in an abusive relationship, this is why Stockholm Syndrome exists. It's because it creates a psychological addiction to the cycle. The person will, or you will, have like a honeymoon stage where you're making up or, everything feels great and you're going on dates or, you're having intimacy, and then it goes into a chaotic fight. Somebody says something. It doesn't matter. It always happens. It doesn't even matter when it's over, but they're upset about something. And then it goes into you apologizing or them apologizing. And while all these things are happening, your brain is like firing off these chemicals. So your dopamine, your serotonin, your endorphins, all of this adrenaline's pumping throughout the process. And it forms the same sort of cycle that you would be in if you had a gambling or a sex addiction. Do you realize that? I didn't for a long time. And then here's the crazier part. The abusive cycle where the person's like overly abusive and like they're overt about it, okay? Overt, like it's obvious. Physical, lots of verbal whatever, screaming at you. That is one version of this little cycle I'm telling you about. But the covert is different. The covert will have you apologizing instead of them apologizing to you. It will have you upset. It will have, it like shifts it. And there's not a protective mechanism in the court system to fix this, to help you. So what a lot of women experience now, I've received a lot of DMs, okay? Also, I got counseling from an organization here locally in College Station in Bryan called SARC. And they handle sexual abuse recovery. It's called the Sexual Abuse Recovery Center. But they also get quite a few cases in of domestic violence. It's not always tied to the same thing. But what my counselor told me is most long-term relationships that experience abuse, especially sexual abuse, are experiencing coercive control. And one of the biggest indicators of coercive control is that one person holds all of the financial resources. And the other person can't just do things as they want to, okay? They don't have a say in making financial decisions. And when they do ask for things, a lot of times it's told, no, or we have to wait, or I'm sorry, we can't do that. But the person making all the financial decisions, they can shell money wherever they want. Okay, that power imbalance creates one of the two to have to do things, whatever the things are, because they are literally, their body is afraid that their basic needs won't be met. And if you have experienced that, I want you to know I'm praying over you, okay? Because I know what it's like, and it's scary, and it's not healthy, and that is not love. That is not love. Even if it feels like love, this is not love. Love is not designed to make you go into fight or flight. Love is not frequent conflict. Love is not things that make you question who you are. That is not love. Our Father in heaven doesn't love us like that. And if you're in a relationship with somebody and you're constantly questioning if you're doing the right thing, you're not in love with them. They're not in love with you. It doesn't mean that you don't have feelings for them. It doesn't mean that you may not be trying to show them love. But that is not a reciprocal love there, okay? That is control. And it's likely that if you feel like you might be in a trap, you probably have been in one for some period of time. Leah wrote some stuff. I nearly lost my daughter to this. Someone who vowed to love her. You know, I understand, Leah, because usually when you're in a controlling relationship, and it doesn't have to be a romantic one. It could be a roommate or a family member too. Okay, just oftentimes we see what I'm describing in a romantic relationship. A lot of times it has just depleted you so much, and that person is always making promises. They're always rewriting the script in their head. They're oftentimes saying things like, I'm never like that, or you know I love them, or you know this or that. Love is an action, love is a behavior, and your behavior towards somebody, or if it's not aligned with their words, it's not love. That's not love, which is hard for me to accept. I will tell you that I really struggled in more than one relationship because it took a couple of different versions to get to a place where, one, I felt comfortable sharing about any of this, two, to walk away, okay? The average person inside of a domestic violence situation or relationship tries to leave 7 to 8 times before they actually leave. They oftentimes will leave and come back. So they're trying, but they don't know how to get out of it, and they don't know how to break the cycle. So once you do leave, then you have to figure out how to make, usually you don't have any resources. Oftentimes the other person gets extremely aggressive. Now they may not be aggressive like at your front door. Instead, you may be getting floods of texts, or you may end up getting a lot of threats or name calling, or they may go hire a big attorney and try to get you that way. There's a lot of different ways that person will get highly aggressive. I want you to know that you have rights. You can reference texaslawhelp.org, or in your own state, there are also resources. But you have to check with what your county allows, okay? But you can file temporary restraining orders. You can also file, if you have any sort of evidence that if you have kids and there's any sort of problems with the kids, you can file a temporary restraining order, and you can request something called ex parte. And that means that the judge will sign, you're asking the judge to sign off on it before you guys have a hearing. Now, what they can do is they can go and they can file once they're served. You can have an officer serve it, by the way, so that they know it's serious. Or you can use like a server service and have them served, but they have to have it served. And you can serve it with the divorce paperwork, okay? So that is something that you have a right to. Again, this is not legal advice. This is something that you have available to you depending on your county. You have to check with your county and your state for what the proper procedures are. You can file all of this by yourself. Now, there are steps, like you have to write an exhibit list, you have to provide documentation if they are cutting you off from resources financially. You can also put a restraining order in there if they are coming by the house after you guys have separated, or they're threatening. You can put that in there. You have to make your stuff very specific, but there's a lot of different things. You're going to have to use your own search engines, and you're going to have to pray, because nobody gets through something like this completely by themselves. But the good Lord will give you guidance if you lean on Him. I promise. He'll make things happen that you didn't even know could happen, okay? And I have way more that happened in mine that there's no way it wasn't God. Like, it was only God, okay? Was it ideal? No, but it was a miracle. So the other thing is, they can, after you ask for ex parte, the judge will sign off, and they'll cross out anything in there that they don't approve of or that they're agreeing. Then you have if they don't respond to it, then your next step is to go to a temporary orders hearing, and that's going to set up if you're going for custody and you have children with them, that's going to set up the terms of the custody. And then if you're divorcing with children, it's going to set up the terms of what's going to happen with you guys until you guys decide and your divorce is finalized. So temporary orders are really good to have in place if you have children or if you have assets. It kind of just tells both parties what you can and can't do. So you have temporary restraining order, and then you have temporary orders, and then you have your final decree of whatever it is, okay? If you're experiencing threats and you're experiencing something where you feel like your children are not being handled safely, or the other parents making threats that you won't be able to see them again or something like that, I'm not going to tell you what to do because I'm not legal, not your legal advisor, but you can file that temporary restraining order and request ex parte, which will allow you to get it signed. And then they have options if they go and hire a lawyer or they file themselves, which they oftentimes don't. They usually, a lot of times they hire somebody, but they can tell the judge, no, I'm going to fight this. I'm going to counter divorce. And then you guys go to a hearing, okay? The hearings, I think, in general, are one of the hardest things to be a part of, whether you have a lawyer or not. But I will give you two key elements that will help you. One, you need to dress professional, but not loud. Like no jewelry, no bright makeup. If you're a guy, you want to make sure that you do wear a suit if possible, but you don't want to be flashy. Nothing sparkly, nothing bright. Navy, think a navy blue suit. Boring, like think boring. As boring as you can. Your hair needs to be well groomed. So when you show up, you want to look like the most boring human possible. It keeps things from being a distraction, okay? And it helps everybody in the courtroom take you more seriously. It's the same way that you would dress if you were in a professional meeting with like a CEO of, I know I wore something really similar. I had to do an interview with a large corporation years ago. And whenever I did interviews, always dress conservative. That's not the time to bring out the flash. So think about it as I am about to go interview with an accounting firm. What would I wear? I would wear something very, very conservative, not hardly any jewelry. Like hardly any jewelry, okay? And then you want to also make sure that classic's a good word, okay? That things are steamed or pressed. This is important. It's not just your outfit. It is how you're presenting yourself in a formal setting to someone that's going to make a decision over your life and your children's lives. So that's the first thing. The second thing that's really, really important when you go to any sort of a hearing or even if you were to go to mediation or something like that, or an interview with a lawyer, if you're looking to hire one, I would say the second thing is not being emotional. It's not the time to cry. You have therapy. Go to therapy. There's lots of free therapy out there, and when you don't have free therapy, there's always 12-step program support groups, okay? That's where you go cry. You do not cry on stand. And that's a really hard one. Look, I am like world's biggest feeler. Like if there is a sensitive human out there, it is me. I am so sensitive, it's unbelievable. I can walk into a room and I can basically in just a few moments feel everyone's emotions immediately. I somehow strangely can tell things about people that they've never actually said. I can feel it. And I have on more than one occasion cried in my car from a work meeting or a difficult situation at work. But let me tell you, the courtroom is not a place for tears. This is not a place to get angry. It's not a place to cry. It's a place where you want to only state facts. It's not a place to share your feelings. You want to state the things that you prepared or your lawyer prepared, and that's it. As you go through a case, you're going to find that the other party oftentimes will attack character. They will attack things. They will go for the jugular oftentimes. Things that, in all honesty, they would never want said to them. Your job in yourself is to maintain your integrity, and you don't attack back. That's not your job. Your job is to state the facts and stay to that framework and hold to your integrity. Because here's the thing, whether you're in a courtroom or you're walking down the street, you have something inside of you that the rest of the world may not appreciate, but your Father in heaven knows. He sees you. There is a story about Hagar in the Bible, and she is Sarah's mistress who ends up, Sarah tells her to sleep with her husband Abraham, who back then was Abram, when they couldn't get pregnant, and he was like 85, and Hagar does, and then Sarah and Hagar don't get along, and so Sarah banishes her, and she runs away to the wilderness. And in the middle of the wilderness, the Lord sends an angel to her, and he tells her, you're gonna have a son that's gonna be multiply. And it's interesting when you follow the lineage. That's all the way back up to Ishmael, who is her son. It ends up being the father of like the Islamic religion. So that's really interesting. But side note, God sees her, and she is the only person in the Bible that gives God a name, and she calls him Elroy. So I want you to know that your job as you move through leaving a relationship, if you were experiencing coercive control, if you were experiencing overt, like somebody that's really just mean, you know it's not right. You know this is not what God designed, and you've given the chances, and you've done as much, and you're just losing yourself in all of it. That's not God's design. Sorry, that's not what God designed. God did not design us to stay in abusive relationships. He didn't. No. There's a lot of scripture around that too, which we can get into on another day. Let's see. The other thing that I think is really important to know on your rights is that there are injunctions you can put into the temporary orders. You can make requests, and this is what a lot of people don't know. So you can make a request to not let, I don't know if you know this, but 24 hours before somebody has a child, if they don't stop drinking alcohol can actually stay in your system and get higher after just 12 hours. And so a lot of injunctions will allow you to put it in there as, I want, 12 hours in advance, no alcohol be allowed while you're watching the child, right? If you're struggling with somebody who you're not sure, and they do drink, or they've drank a lot in the past and they've made some pretty poor decisions, you can put 24 hours in, and you back it up with just simple science, especially if it's a small kid. Other things that you can put in there, or you can require some. Now, anything you put in there, you're held to too, but you can request regular drug testing if they are a addict. You can request that your child not set foot into gambling establishments. You can request something, right of first refusal, where if that person can't watch your kids, it defaults to giving you the option first before they reach out to somebody else. So that's another one. You can also request that your kids not live with your spouse if they decide to live with somebody without being married. So if you're concerned about that, that's something that you can put in there. I forgot what that one's called. So if you have concerns about anything in your life with your kids, I want you to know you can ask for very specific things as you move through this process. You can put it in the temporary orders request, and then it carry out all the way through the final decree. Your temporary orders are kind of like training wheels for a full divorce. Some people do try to reconcile I won't go into any of that, but the temporary orders kind of act as like it's almost like a mini version. And then when you get to a place where you're looking to close the books, every state has different requirements. Some states have a really long period of separation, okay? Texas has somewhat of a shorter separation period. It's about 60 days. Feels like a long time though when you're in it. And that gives you time to kind of figure things out. But you can go to mediation. You can go to mediation, just the two of you. You can go to mediation with if you both have lawyers. You can go to mediation if one of you has a lawyer, one of you doesn't. It just kind of depends on the situation. Mediation is a really great tool, but you have to realize that neither of you is going to walk away feeling like it's amazing. You're not going to like walk away from it and you're like, oh yeah, that was awesome. Look, it's a formal compromise. And so knowing what's important to you is what you need to hold on to and not compromise in that. And then the things that are not that important, make the concessions, okay? It's going to be a little this, that, a little this, that. That's kind of the same way a settlement offer works. For couples that have recognized that maybe divorce is too expensive, or sometimes a lawyer will see that the case, once they get into like the hearings at the beginning, they'll start seeing that maybe like a case isn't really like what they thought it was. And so a lot of times they'll push to settle at that point. And settlement's also a great option. Again, it's like kind of like mediation. You're just corresponding, back and forth. The last thing that I wanted to bring up, because a lot of people don't know that this is also something that they can do. You can request financial discovery. And what that is if you feel like money is being hid from you or assets are being hid from you, you can request that the other side produces it. Now they can request that you produce stuff too. So again, it always goes both ways, but discovery is a really great tool to kind of see in a formal way where assets or bank accounts or businesses, what's going on, okay? And the thing is that you can also have them deposed. So they can have a written deposition and a verbal one in that discovery process. If they do not tell the truth and you have ways to show that they're not telling the truth, then you can bring that to light when you go through court. Okay. Again, this is general information. You can find it on many legal sites. In Texas, there's one called texaslawhelp.org. It's got a lot of information on there. But if you save this recording, you can play it back and also subscribe. Y'all, if you go to the link in my bio, I have this thing called Sunday Letters. Subscribe to it because I'm going to share more information about this kind of stuff, whether it's coercive control or how to create an exit strategy if you are leaving a situation, or what some of your financial options might be, or how to go pro se. God's been pretty clear for me not to shut up about it. Although I will protect my children's I will protect my children through the process. The Lord is saying I need to share this information with you guys. I've gone through 2 separate divorces with children, and a lot happened. Neither of them were easy. So I understand if you're right now feeling like you're in the thick of it, or you're like afraid to start this process. I get it. And I was afraid. It was the Lord that led me through all of it. But the biggest thing is you stay true to your character. You'll know when you're doing something right or wrong, you know? Like, no matter what the other side does. Because they'll try, especially defense lawyers, they will try everything, okay? They will drag cases out. I've seen that happen to people. Maybe they'll push for settlement quickly. It doesn't matter. Maybe they'll attack your character or your mental health. That's pretty common. They're going to use whatever they can use because they're trying to win for their client. But just because they're doing something doesn't mean that it's acting in integrity. And you can hold yourself accountable for you. So as you walk through something that's difficult, I want you to know whether you're still in a relationship and you're not sure what to do next, or you're in the thick of a very, very ugly divorce. I want you to know that you can still stay in alignment with you. And as you do that, God's going to do something in you. He will do things behind the scenes that you can't imagine. He'll send an angel like he did Hagar. Or later on, she runs away, and guess what he does? He creates a well of water. She thinks that her and her son are about to die, and he makes a well of water appear. Okay? We have a God of miracles, and you don't know what he's doing behind the scenes, but your job in this situation that you are in, you're being called. You're being called to rise above. No, you don't have to stay there, and you don't have to know the way out. The Israelites didn't know how to get out of Egypt. Read the Old Testament. They didn't know how to get out of Egypt. God parted the Red Sea for them. And that's the same God that loves you. And that's the same God that loves me. And you don't have to hold on to whatever this person did to you. I want you to remember something. Whatever someone does to you is a reflection of them. That is not anything in your worth. You are worth far beyond anything that a human can give you. So if you're struggling right now, if you're feeling down right now, if you're like, don't know how you're going to make ends meet, and you don't know how you're going to get out of it, and you're fearing your life, and you're fearing your kids' lives, and you're like, man, if I stay, I'm going to die. And if I leave, I don't know what I'm going to do. Your God is there, and he's going to deliver you. But you're going to have to not know the answers, and you're going to have to trust him.